Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into where we was at last time. And I think I can go here. Let's see, maybe here. And yep, right there. Okay. We'll move this guy out the way. Yeah. All right. So we stopped, I think we stopped about right in here. When you guys watch the video, you're gonna be able to see it kind of goes through some of this, but it's gonna be, I think you guys are gonna enjoy it, but it's gonna be a little bit of shocking information too. All right, Zionism has its roots in a Jewish messianic movement that seeks to establish an independent Jewish state through which their Messiah, the Jewish people as a whole, could rule the world. The place that they decided to occupy was Old Palestine. The modern term Zionism first appeared at the end of the 19th century, denoting the movement whose goal was to return the Jewish people to Erez Israel Palestine. It was coined by Nathan Birnbaum, a Jew, in his journal, Substemmancipitation, April 1st, 1890. The term Zionism, as used by Birnbaum, was intended to express a political orientation toward Palestine, as he spoke of the National Political Zionist Party. This concept was different from the prevailing philanthropic approach. Before this time, it was thought practical that the Jews, being a scattered and integrated people, should have a homeland of their own, and humanitarian pleas were made in this regard. It was at this time that some theologians started supporting the idea as being a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. So you see when they started coming up with this stuff, and what's that guy's name? John Hagee, the guy with the glasses? That's all he talks about. The actual transition of Zionism from its practical and philanthropic aspect into its political, economic, and military objectives clearly developed with the efforts of the Jewish Zionist leader, Theodor Herzl. Herzl argued that the Jews of Western Europe, even after receiving equal rights, had been unable to assimilate and still compromise a nation within a nation. Herzl warned that Jews would be pushed into the arms of socialist revolution, and the stability of the present order would be severely undermined. It was therefore incumbent upon the states of Europe to assist in establishing a Jewish state, assuring it of international legitimation. Now you'll see when you go up here and watch that video, you're going to see just how they did this. Now, in response to the Jewish Zionist effort, there was an offer made by the British government in 1903 for a Jewish self-governing settlement. Because at this time, you'll find out that the British government owed these people. And Uganda, East Africa, but the Zionists look back at the measure as one which nearly wrecked the Zionist movement. And another endeavor to appease the Zionists, the British colonial secretary agreed to give the Jews the British-held Sinai Peninsula, the El Arish Project. But this too came to naught. A plan to make Madagascar a Jewish nation also generated no Jewish interest. Clearly, not all Jews were in favor of this Zionist plan, as they viewed Herzl as somewhat deranged. And this is out of the Encyclopedia of Jewish History, right? And the National Jewish Encyclopedia. And they give you the dates, 1986. I'm still hoping I can get my hands on one of those from 1905, because that has a lot of good information. Rabbis fear that Herzl's idea would provoke a new wave of anti-Semitism. They denounced the Jewish state concept in pamphlets and conferences. Likewise, when Napoleon years earlier gave invitation to the Jews to settle in Jerusalem, under his aegis, it aroused no Jewish interest. Why then were the leaders of the Zionist movement insisting upon the Jewish state in Palestine and nowhere else? If half of Europe would have been offered to these Zionists, they would still rather have the small barren land of Palestine. Why? It is partly because the Jews are incapable of existing on their own, but in Palestine, they could draw Christian support as God's chosen people, right? And we see that this is happening right now. Returning to Zion. There would clearly be great political and financial leverage to be had by possessing the ancient high places of the true Israel people. The leaders of Edom did have a plan. As the counterfeit Israel people, they could use their cover to fulfill Edomite goals, not Israelite ones. Zionism is the best advertised of all present Jewish activities and has exerted a greater influence upon the world events than the average man realizes. Because of the admixture of religious sentiment, it would be rather difficult for a certain class of people to scrutinize modern political Zionism. They have been too well propagandized into believing that political Zionism and the return promised by the prophets are the same. Like that girl I was talking to, I said, well, then where's all these other things that spoke? Well, no, it has to happen little by little. That's what they tell them. Now, at the turn of the century, the time was right for a change. A great and significant scene was about to unfold on the stage that was to be in line with Elohim's script, and the Zionist Jews were to be characters in the script acting out a role of Esau, not Jacob. The area of Palestine had been under the control and rule of Turkey or its Ottoman Empire. Remember we learned about that? Everybody? Okay.
Yeah.
Which had existed since 1299 AD. In 1822, Edmund Rothchild, a Jew, began financing a Jewish society which attempted the immigration of a considerable number of Jewish settlers into Palestine, prompting the Turkish authorities immediately to publish orders to forbid further entry. On May 17, 1901, Herzl met with the Turkish Sultan regarding Zionist plans and terms for a Jewish national home in Palestine, and an agreement was made. Herzl immediately went to London, where he spoke with much confidence of the success of his mission with the Sultan and asked the Jewish people for $1,500,000 for the purpose of obtaining the charter. But the Jewish people kept silent. Although the Jewish population in general had no interest in settling in Palestine, the Zionists persisted. This disinterest stemmed from the bulk of Jewry being ignorant of their own religion and what the Talmud and protocols have to say regarding world control. The essence of Zionism, political Zionism, is part of the Jewish religion, as revealed by Rabbi Stephen S. Wise in stating Zionism is Judaism, and Judaism is unthinkable without Zionism. To establish their political goals, the Zionists need a political change in the Palestinian territory, and there is nothing that can cause political change more surely than war. The international Zionists, bankers, and plutocrats thus instigated the Balkan War in 1912, which brought a revolt against Turkey, weakening it and causing it to lose some of its territory. The Balkan crisis was like a powder keg in the European arena, and its repercussions helped to participate World War I on July 28, 1914. It was necessary to bring Turkey on the side of Germany and Central Powers because the Zionists knew that an Allied victory was expected to result in major territorial changes in the Ottoman Empire, of which Palestine was a part. Because remember, they still had a problem with the Ottomans from way back. Remember, we saw that in the first video, right? And that's one thing about these people. They never forget. You got to understand, if you don't go along with something that they want, they will kill you. It doesn't matter if it takes centuries. They never forget, and they will get you. On Turkey's entry into the war, our Zionists and Jew Cain Wiseman commenced a political campaign on behalf of Zionism. During this period, Wiseman met with the Britain's First Lord of the Admiralty, Arthur Balfour, right, explaining to him the historical roots of Zionism. Balfour was willing to help promote the idea of restoring the Jewish homeland in Palestine if it was liberated from the Turks. You got to remember now, this Balfour guy, Arthur Balfour, he was Jewish as well. Because what they do is, once they come to a country, you know, they try to set up the banks, then they try to infiltrate their economy, then they're going to try to infiltrate their government. So that before you know it, they're sitting in high-ranking places in that government, and that's what this guy Balfour was doing. Balfour was willing to help promote the idea. Okay, so the following year, several developments that generally advanced the cause of Zionism took place. There was a strange cabinet crisis in December 1916, after which Lord George became prime minister and Arthur Balfour foreign minister. You see how they said that? It was a strange cabinet crisis. Both these men and some of their immediate subordinates were outspoken supporters of Zionist aspiration. With pro-Zionist individuals now controlling British affairs, it was essential that Britain prevailed in the war so that Turkey could be conquered and its Ottoman Empire overthrown. And then international Zionists agreed to bring the United States into the war to help bail out Britain through the insistence of his intimate advisor, Zionist agent Colonel Edward M. Howe. See what I'm saying? They got agents all up in there. Woodrow Wilson brought the U.S. into the war in 1917 because they control all these people, whether it's by catching you, putting some type of prostitute or something on you and filming you and recording you, or like they did J. Edgar Hoover. You know, J. Edgar Hoover, he was a homosexual. And the little guy used to ride around with him all the time, that was his lover. So they got pictures of him and this, so him and this guy. So they one way or the other, you're gonna do what they want you to do. Now, the British forces took possession of Palestine from the Turks in 1917, though the war persisted. The Zionists were pressing the British to formally issue a declaration that stated Great Britain favored the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people on July 18, 1917. Lord Lionel Walter Rothchild submitted a draft declaration to Balfour expressing to him what the Zionists wanted. Later, Balfour addressed the British War Cabinet on the matter, and at the meeting, the declaration was adopted. 2 days later, on November 2nd, 1917, Balfour wrote a letter to Lionel Rothschild enclosing a copy of the declaration and requesting him to communicate it to the Zionist Federation. This became known as the Balfour Declaration. And I guarantee right now, if you ask so many people, first of all, if you ask people, you get in a conversation about this, you ask them, do they know what the Balfour Declaration is? Either they don't know or they're going to be surprised that you know. To assure that Palestine would be a Zionist control, British forces were ordered to enter and occupy Jerusalem in December 1917. The highest of the ancient high places was now secure for the Jews to immigrate into and occupy. With the Balfour Declaration, which assured a Jewish national home in Palestine under Britain as the protecting power, many Jews now, for the first time, gave their support to the World Zionist Organization. Now we know.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this because they have been titled Yahuwah's chosen people? Is this what gives them the nerve or the spunk to come up and say they want a separate area?
Well, you got to remember, as far as he's concerned, that's his birthright anyway. Because they try to see, that's the hate. That's why he hates us so bad. Because he says that we stole his birthright, and he actually sold it because it didn't mean anything to him.
Right.
So what they do as being like the bloodsuckers that they are, they like we just read, they want this state so that they can steady get money from all these other countries to support them while they do other adventures they have other ventures that they do.
Under the guise that they are the chosen people.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I hear a lot of people in these churches say that they, besides John Hagee, they are sending money to these people because these things are coming on TV and they showing older so-called Jewish women, and they starving and have nothing to eat. But that was my question. Was it because they were supposed to be the chosen people?
Well, that's the thing about it. These churches, you got to remember, these churches, a lot of these pastors are Masons.
Yeah.
And Masonry comes from these people. So they're going to support them. Some of them might even be getting a check to do, like these big mega churches. They don't get this stuff on their own. Remember we read in a couple of classes ago how they infiltrate the churches and all these places, because you got to look at it like this. They know Elohim exists. Remember, we just got done reading that the Elohim hates them, and they know this. So they in league with Hasatan. That's the Messiah that they waiting on to come.
I got it.
So their whole thing is, they believe they hate the Mashiach. They hate the Father, and they think that Hasatan is going to win this war. So their whole thing is, they want to destroy as many people as they can, because they know that you got to keep the commandments. They know these things, but they have their own books like the Talmud and the Mishnah, but they know their Bible. Please believe that. And they're going to do everything that they can to destroy as many people as they can, because they take on the nature of Hasatan. That's what people got to understand. So this is why we do the lessons like we do them, because I'm trying to get you guys to see how important these commandments are, when they got the rest of the world thinking that, that you don't have to do this no more. All that stuff comes from them. And then you got people that believe that their brothers, or they're subservient to these people, and they're living a life like they want to live, and they having a good time, and they believe this stuff too. Just because somebody opens up a Bible and starts talking to you, that doesn't mean anything.
Oh no, I know, because I know Hasatan knows the word, but I know that a lot of these churches still are not open, and I think it was like you say, it's because of them. Plus, the government is telling them you can't open up yet.
Well, when you was going to Ever Faithful, right?
Yeah.
Didn't you believe that these people was the people?
Oh yeah.
Okay, and your pastor was definitely putting it out there about these are the children of Israel, even though, but a lot of people don't know this history. That's why I'm putting this stuff up here, because you got to know the history of how they got. The scripture tells us, but a lot of people don't know that either, because of the fact that they keep you out of the up for the old covenant. Don't worry about that. Just stay in this new part of the book, where the renewed covenant is at, or the repairing of the covenant. So that's where they keep you at. So if you don't read the prophets, then you don't understand that it's a whole lot of things that has to happen for Israel to go back home.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. I used to, up until 3.5 years ago, I believed that they were the chosen, and I was always praying for them, giving them money. The churches I was in sent them money, funded different projects in Noel and I bought trees in Israel, so-called, for the
Really?
the olive trees. Yeah.
Wow.
And I could, and now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what I did and how dumb. But I didn't know. But I know now.
Right. Yeah, you
I
didn't
know
know.
now.
Right. You didn't know. So it's no big deal, but the thing about it is, praise Yah, because he opened up your eyes.
Yes. And I couldn't understand, when I was watching this video, I kind of understand. I think Hitler thought, in a way, he was doing the father a favor, because he even said, they're not the real Jews. The Negroes are the real Jews.
Right.
And people are, so.
Right, because then now you're being an anti-Semite and all this type of stuff. So this is why we're doing this, right? Because but that's they're masters of manipulation, and that's what we have to understand. They're masters at it, and so here you got the whole world duped, and the people that's if you look around, sometime I'll be wondering if some of these, it's all over the world, when these people are getting oppressed and just slaughtered by numbers. I just wonder if they are, maybe out of the 10 tribes. You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of these places, they know the Father, they know who He is. They're practicing these things, but they'll never, the news will never tell you that, because guess who owns the newsreels? Guess who owns The newspapers, I mean, they own everything. So they can
Yeah.
move like they want, never, and you'll never know about it because it'll never be broadcasted on the news unless somebody tells you, or you find some type of report on some other foreign channel or something like that. Because if you in America, you ain't finna know nothing.
Mhm.
Just sad. So, but I mean, let's keep going. Yep, this is it's something else. I can remember when I was going to church. I mean, I really thought that these were the people. And my father was like, "Man, me and him used to argue all the time." I was like, "Man, you done lost your mind, man. You gonna see them are the people. Can't you see how they won that war so fast?" And all I can remember all of that. Yeah, yeah. But they own the United States. They own everything actually. So they don't really have to have. They got an army, but it's like a make. I mean, it's a top-notch army. I got to say that. I mean, Israeli soldiers, boy, they something else. But at the same time, guess who backs them? United States. And they've been all over the place, and you can always see why different countries have problems with them. Like Russia, they want Russia bad, but Putin, he's not letting them banks over there. When Greece went up under, why you think Greece went bankrupt? Because they would, and they just try to destroy them because they would not let them come set up banks in Greece. And now the Chinese is all over the place. I don't know what they're gonna do about them because they got their own banks and everything. But China is such a power. They can't just China. I mean, who's gonna step to them? Plus, they in scripture. So I mean, we got to understand that because they do understand that. So China they open up that Silk Road again, and I'm talking about they're devouring countries, and countries is going with them because they coming in, they restabilizing everything, they giving them a economy. People is eating now, they can raise their kids, but these people and everybody with them, they destroy everything. So I watched it's like a 5-part series on that. China opened up that Silk Road, and I'm telling you, they doing big things, and people need to know that. Now let's keep rolling. At the conclusion of the war, the British received Palestine as a mandate under the League of Nations. Now, this was set up first, the League of Nations, before the United Nations. It failed, though, with the understanding that the Jewish people would be encouraged to settle there, but the discontent of the Arabs who desired self-government and resented the immigration of the Jews led to a constant turmoil. Remember, they had been fighting with these people way back, right? The Nabateans, remember we read that. The Zionist plan was being threatened with the sympathy, well, all the way back to the Khazarians, actually, right? The Arabs had in Europe. Further, a spirit of nationalism was spread throughout the Arabian world. Another dramatic scene was about to be acted out on center stage. Another political change was needed. The Edomite Zionist Jews were scheming world plans. The UN partition plan. Palestine had been occupied and ruled by the Arabs ever since the Muslim force conquered in 637 AD. Who was and who was that? That was Muhammad and then Saladin. You ever watched this movie called the Kingdom of Heaven? It goes back and forth and talks about Saladin. The act and the what's these other people? The Crusaders. The act of establishing a national home for one group of people in an occupied area such as this was an unprecedented innovation in international law. The Zionists faced the burden of convincing the world that the Jews should be given the right to occupy Palestine, since this country already had a population which had been there for centuries. 1,300 years, it could not be simply handed over to the Jewish people. The British government made several unsuccessful attempts to quiet Arabs' feelings of hostility to the Zionist plans. Since the Balfour Declaration guarded the rights of the Arab population, no definite conclusion could be arrived at. Another political change was needed, such as that only a war can bring, with Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Winston Churchill willing partners of Zionists, because his mother was a Jewish woman. And they say that their line is not from the men, like Yahuwah says, that their line comes from the woman. It took little effort to bring America and Britain into World War II. The aftermath of the war allowed the Jewish Zionists to establish their international organization called the United Nations. See, at first it was the League of Nations. That didn't work. So now they went ahead and established the United Nations. In 1947, the British gave up the Palestine Mandate, placed the Palestine problem in the hands of Zionists, created communist-controlled United Nations. See that? The General Assembly approved plans to place Jerusalem under the international control and petitioned Palestine into separate Arab and Jewish states. With the boundary lines drawn in Palestine, according to the Zionist partition plan, a Jewish state in Palestine was established with the backing of the United Nations. On May 14, 1948, the Jewish state proclaimed its independence under its president, Chairman Weizmann, and Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. See, this President Harry Truman receiving the Jewish Torah scroll from Zionist Chairman Weizmann. Truman instructed his country UN delegate to vote in favor of the partition plan in spite of opposition from the US State Department. So they don't care what you do. Now, we're going to hit this last one, and then we're going to watch this video. The Jewish author Arthur Koestler states that the right of the state of Israel to exist is not based on the origins of the Jewish people as being Israel, nor on the covenant of Abraham with Elohim. Rather, it is based on international law, i.e. on the United Nations decision in 1947 to partition Palestine. The Jews have not possessed the land according to the biblical requirements surrounding Zion. The Israel state was founded upon a systematic program of violence, deceit, murder, and war instigated by the Jews. And this fact alone should dismiss the idea that they are Israel coming to Zion. We should now begin to see the modus operandi of Judaism and Zionism and how they are not the ways of Israel, but of Edom. The Jewish World Program has used political upheavals and financial power to attain its objectives. This was expressed by the Jewish Zionist leader, Theodor Herzl, right? Zionism is a part of a program for political conquest of the world, the UN being its chief instrument of super government as mentioned in protocols. The possessing of the ancient lands and holy place of Israel is only a rule so that Zionist Jews can succor the gullible Christians. It's just a shame, but it's true. Into supporting them as being Elohim's chosen people, fulfilling prophecy. I'm talking about people. I mean, it's crazy because I believed it. And I mean, like we all said, we all believed it too. Meanwhile, the Zionists are free to terrorize, murder, sabotage, spy, and get billions in free aid. Jewish Palestine is a communistic and atheist-ridden monstrosity whose only ambition is not to serve the world, but to rule it. We have seen that the Bible speaks of the Israel people going to the New Jerusalem or Zion, which is the new land, as for the story regarding their ancient land. Okay, but I'm not worried about that. Let's see. Yeah.
Looks like the Arabs that want to go into Jerusalem so bad, you would think they would know the truth and they would be speaking out about it.
Well, you know, I'm gonna tell you something. I got a thing. The last ones that really knew what was going on, I forgot his name. He's the one that was dealing with the Suez Canal. Oh man, what was his name? I got a screenshot. I just closed it out of him saying that all he knows is he knows that these can't be the people because he knows that the Jews left black but came back white.
Wow.
I cannot. I got his. You know what? Let me see something here. Let me see. Yeah, I closed it out and I can't get to it right now. But I'll show you guys. I'll show it to you guys tomorrow in class. I'll show it. I can't remember his name, but I watched like an hour documentary on the whole thing with the Suez Canal and how that's what they did when when they made that canal. They started saying the Middle East because they was trying to separate it from Africa. I mean, these people are like brilliant, right? So
Wow.
yeah, we'll get into this the next time. We're gonna get into this prophecy, but we're not gonna go through this whole book. But I just wanted to hit. We got like it's only 60 pages, but I'm gonna get the meat out of it. So and we're gonna do that. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and we're gonna let me do this so I can make sure I do it right this time. Escape. Okay, we're gonna stop this share. We're gonna get a new share. And we're gonna go right here. And we're gonna start from where we left off today. Okay, let's get it together.
1928. William S. Paley, a Jew, founds CBS Radio and goes on to build it into a multi-billion-dollar TV empire. On page 572 of June 1 ST's Rothchild-owned publication, La Revue de Paris, a letter to Karl Marx from Baruch Levy is reprinted, an extract of which reads as follows: "The Jewish people as a whole will be its own Messiah. It will attain world dominion by the dissolution of other races, by the abolition of frontiers, the annihilation of monarchy, and by the establishment of a world republic in which the Jews will everywhere exercise the privilege of citizenship. In this new world order, the children of Israel will furnish all the leaders without encountering opposition. The governments of the different peoples forming the world republic will fall without difficulty into the hands of the Jews. It will then be possible for the Jewish rulers to abolish private property, and everywhere to make use of the resources of the state. Thus will the promise of the Talmud be fulfilled, in which is said that when the Messianic time is come, the Jews will have all the property of the whole world in their hands." 1929. In April, Rothschild, Paul Warburg sends out a secret warning to his friends that a collapse and nationwide depression has been planned for later this year. It is certainly no coincidence that the biographies of all the Wall Street giants of that era, John D. Rockefeller, J. P. Morgan Jr., Joseph Kennedy, Bernard Baruch, et al., all marvel at the fact these people got out of the stock market completely, just before the crash, and put their assets into cash or gold. So, as all the bankers and their friends already knew, in August the Federal Reserve began to tighten the money supply. And on October 24th, the big New York bankers called in their 24-hour broker call loans. This meant that both the stockbrokers and their customers had to dump their stocks on the stock market to cover their loans, irrespective of what price they had to sell them for. As a result of this, the stock market crashed, a day that would go down in history as Black Thursday. In his book, The Great Crash 1929, John Kenneth Galbraith makes the following shocking statement: at the height of the selling frenzy, Bernard Baruch brought Winston Churchill into the visitors' gallery of the New York Stock Exchange to witness the panic and impress him with his power over the wild events on the floor. Republican Congressman Louis T. McFadden, chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee, from 1920 to 1931, who was a staunch critic of the Jewish bankers, is quite candid as to who was responsible when he states of this crash: "It was not accidental. It was a carefully contrived occurrence. The international bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair here so that they might emerge as rulers of us all." Despite the claims of how the Federal Reserve would protect the country against depressions and inflation, they continued to further contract the money supply. Between 1929 and 1933, they would reduce the money supply by an additional 33%. Even Milton Friedman, the Nobel Peace Prize-winning economist, stated the following in a radio interview in January 1996: "The Federal Reserve definitely caused the Great Depression by contracting the amount of currency in circulation by 1/3 from 1929 to 1933. In only a few weeks from the day of the crash, $3 billion of wealth vanished. Within a year, $40 billion of wealth vanished. However, it did not simply disappear. It just ended up consolidated in fewer and fewer hands, as was planned. An example of this is Joseph P. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's father. In 1929 he was worth $4 million. In 1935, following the greatest depression in America's history, that had increased to over $100 million. This is why depressions are caused. To take money out of the hands of the many for the benefit of a few. On this occasion the money would be largely spent overseas, as whilst this Great Depression was occurring, millions of American dollars was being spent on rebuilding Germany from damage sustained during World War I, in preparation for the Rothschilds' next war, World War II. Republican Louis T. McFadden, chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee from 1920 to 1931, would state the following in relation to this: after World War I, Germany fell into the hands of the German international bankers. Those bankers bought her and now they own her, lock, stock, and barrel. They have purchased her industries, they have mortgages on her soil, they control her production, they control all her public utilities. The international German bankers have subsidized the present government of Germany, and they have also supplied every dollar of the money Adolf Hitler has used in his lavish campaign to build up a threat to the government of Brüning. When Brüning fails to obey the orders of the German international bankers, Hitler is brought forth to scare the Germans into submission. Through the Federal Reserve Board, over $30 billion of American money has been pumped into Germany. You have all heard of the spending that has taken place in Germany. Modernistic dwellings, her great planetariums, her gymnasiums, her swimming pools, her fine public highways, her perfect factories. All this was done on our money. All this was given to Germany through the Federal Reserve Board. The Federal Reserve Board has pumped so many billions of dollars into Germany that they dare not name the total. Interestingly, the money pumped into Germany to build her up in preparation for World War II, is into the German Nissen banks, which are affiliated with the Rothschild-controlled Harriman interest in New York. 1930. This year, 33 years after the First World Zionist Congress was held in Basel, Switzerland, the first Rothschild World Bank, the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, is established in the same place, Basel, Switzerland. It is established by Charles G. Dawes, Rothschild agent and vice president under President Calvin Coolidge from 1925 to 1929, O.N.D. Young, Rothschild agent, founder of Car and chairman of General Electric from 1922 until 1939, and Jan Marschakt of Germany, president of the Reichsbank. The BIS is referred to by the bankers as the central bank for the central banks. To put this bank into perspective today, whereas the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank deal with governments, the BIS deals only with other central banks. All its meetings are held in secret and involve the top central bankers from around the world. For example, the former head of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, would go to the BIS headquarters in Basel, Switzerland, 10 times a year for these private meetings. The BIS also has the status of a sovereign power and is immune from governmental control. A summary of this immunity is listed below. 1. Diplomatic immunity for persons and what they carry with them, that is diplomatic pouches. 2. No taxation on any transactions, including salaries paid to employees. 3. Embassy-type immunity for all buildings and/or offices operated by the BIS worldwide, including China and Mexico. 4. No oversight or knowledge of operations by any government authority, they are not audited. 5. Freedom from immigration restrictions. 6. Freedom to encrypt any and all communications of any sort. 7. Freedom from any legal jurisdiction, they even have their own police force. Georgetown professor and historian, Carol Quigley, commented on the creation of this central bank in his 1975 book, Tragedy and Hope, as follows: the powers of financial capitalism had a far-reaching plan, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. This system was to be controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world acting in concert, by secret agreements arrived at in frequent meetings and conferences. The apex of the system was to be the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were themselves private corporations. Each central bank sought to dominate its government by its ability to control treasury loans, to manipulate foreign exchanges, to influence the level of economic activity in the country, and to influence cooperative politicians by subsequent economic rewards in the business world. A handful of United States senators led by Henry Cabot Lodge would fight to keep the United States out of the Bank for International Settlements. However, even though the United States rejected this World Central Bank, the Federal Reserve still sent members to participate in its meetings in Switzerland, right up until 1994, when the United States was, officially, dragged into it. 1931. This year United States State Department papers come to light of the following. In 1917, during the Russian Revolution, M. Dendijk, the Netherlands minister in Russia at the time, informed various governments including Britain, France and the United States of the danger of communism, which he identified as overtly Jewish, when he sent them a communique, a segment of which states: the danger is now so great that I feel it my duty to call the attention of the British and all other governments to the fact that if an end is not put to Bolshevism in Russia at once, the civilization of the whole world will be threatened. This is not an exaggeration. I consider that the immediate suppression of Bolshevism is the greatest issue now before the world, not even excluding the war which is still raging, and unless, as above stated, Bolshevism is nipped in the bud immediately, it is bound to spread in one form or another over Europe and the whole world, as it is organized and worked by Jews who have no nationality and whose one object is to destroy for their own ends the existing order of things. Prominent member of the Jewish Alliance Israelite Universelle, Jeannie Zulet, states this year the meaning of the history of the last century is that today 300 Jewish financiers, all masters of lodges, rule the world. 1933. On January 30th, Adolf Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. He expels the Jews as communists out of all governmental positions within Germany. Interestingly, at the time the number of Jews in Germany's government was over 20 times those in their government since the end of World War I. As a result of this expulsion, in July, the Jews hold a world conference in Amsterdam, during which they demand that Hitler reinstate every Jew back to his former position. Hitler refuses, and as a result of this, Samuel Untermyer, the Ashkenazi Jew who blackmailed President Wilson, and is now the head of the American delegation and the president of the whole conference, returns to the United States, and makes a speech on radio which was transcribed in the New York Times, on Monday, August 7, 1933. In the speech he made the following statements: the Jews are the aristocrats of the world. Our campaign is the economic boycott against all German goods, shipping and services. What we are proposing is to prosecute a purely defensive economic boycott that will undermine the Hitler regime and bring the German people to their senses by destroying their export trade on which their very existence depends. Each of you, Jew and Gentile alike, must refuse to deal with any merchant or shopkeeper who sells any German-made goods or who patronizes German ships or shipping. 2/3 of Germany's food supply would have to be imported, and could only be imported with the proceeds of what they exported. So if Germany could not export, 2/3 of Germany's population would starve, as there would be not enough food for more than 1/3 of the population. Nevertheless, Jews throughout America participate in this boycott, protesting outside and damaging any stores in which they found any products with "Made in Germany" printed on them, causing stores to have to dump these products or risk bankruptcy. Once the effects of this boycott began to be felt in Germany, the Germans began boycotting Jewish stores in the same way the Jews had done to stores selling German products in America. The Nazis and the Jews in Palestine collaborate, as they would for the next 7 years. This is because they essentially wanted the same thing. The Jews in Palestine wanted all the Jews to live in Palestine, and the Nazis wanted all Jews out of Germany. Both sides therefore sign a transfer agreement known as Havara, which permitted the transfer of Jews and all their capital from Germany to Palestine. As a result of this agreement, 60,000, approx 20% of Germany's Jews, emigrate to Palestine, and make up 15% of the Jewish population by 1939. They take with them $40 million of assets, worth approximately $600 million today, with the blessing of the Nazi regime. According to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, by September 1939, approximately 282,000 Jews had left Germany and 117,000 from annexed Austria. Of these, some 95,000 emigrated to the United States, 60,000 to Palestine, 40,000 to Great Britain, and about 75,000 to Central and South America, with the largest numbers entering Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Bolivia. More than 18,000 Jews from the German Reich were also able to find refuge in Shanghai, in Japanese-occupied China. At the end of 1939, about 202,000 Jews remained in Germany and 57,000 in annexed Austria, many of them elderly. Interestingly, all of these Jews who left Germany voluntarily before the Second World War even started, will go on to be known as Holocaust survivors, and entitled to reparation payments following the end of the Second World War. This is because the definition of a Holocaust survivor is as follows: any Jew who lived in a country at the time when it was 1. Under Nazi regime, 2. Under Nazi occupation, or 3. Under regime of Nazi collaborators, as well as any Jew who fled due to the above regime or occupation. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Sephardic crypto-Jew, real name Rosenfeld, orders the all-seeing eye to be placed upon all new dollar bills along with the motto, Novus Ordo Seclorum. This is Latin for, a new order of the ages, or as more commonly stated today, New World Order. Furthermore, on November 16, President Roosevelt recognizes the Bolshevik regime of Stalin in Russia without consultation with Congress, whilst 8,000 Ukrainians march in protest in New York. Roosevelt would never admit his Jewish ancestry, but he would go further than most. In the New York Times of March 14, 1935, he is quoted with the following statement: "In the distant past my ancestors may have been Jews. All I know about the origin of the Roosevelt family is that they are apparently descendants of Claes Martens and Van Roosevelt, who came from Holland." In his book, From Pharaoh to Hitler, What is a Jew? Jewish author, Bernard Joseph Brown, admits that since the Jews of today are not Israelites, they have no claim to the land of Palestine. On May 11, Chaim Nachman Bialik, a Jewish poet, widely recognized as Israel's national poet, in an address given to Jews at the Jewish University in Jerusalem, states, "Not in vain have Jews been drawn to journalism. In their hands it became a mighty weapon highly fitted to meet their needs in their war of survival." 1934. In January, staunch Zionist, Vladimir Jabotinsky, gives an update on Samuel Untermeyer's boycott of Germany when he makes the following statement: "The fight against Germany has now been waged for months by every Jewish community, on every conference, in all labor unions, and by every single Jew in the world. There are reasons for the assumption that our share of this fight is of general importance. We shall start a spiritual and material war of the whole world against Germany. Germany is striving to become once again a great nation and to recover her lost territories as well as her colonies. But our Jewish interests call for the complete destruction of Germany. Collectively and individually, the German nation is a threat to us Jews. Swiss banking secrecy laws are reformed and it becomes an offense resulting in imprisonment for any bank employee to violate bank secrecy. This is all in preparation for the Rothschild-engineered Second World War, in which as usual they will fund both sides. In its June 20th issue, New Britain magazine of London publishes a statement made by former British Prime Minister David Lloyd George in which he states that Britain is the slave of an international financial bloc. The article also contains the following words written by Lord Bryce: "Democracy has no more persistent and insidious foe than money power." Questions regarding Bank of England, its conduct and its objects, are not allowed by the Speaker of the House of Commons. In his book, Jews Must Live, published this year, Jewish writer Samuel Roth states of the Jews: "Our major vice of old, as of today, is parasitism. We are a people of vultures living on the labor and the good nature of the rest of the world. But, despite our faults, we would never have done so much damage to the world if it had not been for our genius for evil leadership. Granted our parasitism." Edmund de Rothschild dies. 1935. Between 1930 and 1935. Elizabeth Dunn publishes her 4-volume set, Documents Illustrative of the History of the Slave Trade to America. This shows that Jews totally dominated the trade in African slaves to America, and at least 15 of the ships used to transport the slaves were owned by Jews, some of whom had clear and close ties to the Rothschilds. In order to deceive the authorities that no Jews were involved, they often would use an all-Gentile crew and captain. On November 6, Mao Zedong states all political power comes from the barrel of a gun. The Communist Party must command all the guns. That way, no guns can ever be used to command the party. Subsequently, from 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents are rounded up and exterminated as they are unable to defend themselves from the Communists and China due to Mao Zedong's gun control laws. 1936. With regard to the increase in anti-Semitism in Germany, Samuel Landmann, at the time secretary to the World Zionist Organization, in his 1936 book, Great Britain, the Jews, and Palestine, states the following of the United States' entry into World War I: "The fact that it was Jewish help that brought USA into the war on the side of the Allies has rankled ever since in German, especially Nazi, minds, and has contributed in no small measure to the prominence which anti-Semitism occupies in the Nazi program." On October 3, Republican Congressman Louis T. McFadden, chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee, from 1920 to 1931, is poisoned to death. This is the third assassination attempt on his life. He had suffered an earlier poisoning and had had shots fired at him. McFadden had been one of the staunchest critics of the Federal Reserve and the Jewish criminal cabal behind it. 1937. In his book, Stalin, Trotsky, or Lenin, George Marlin states if the tide of history does not turn toward communist internationalism, then the Jewish race is doomed. In other words, he's saying that the Jews are totally in charge of communist internationalism, and if the world does not turn to a new world order of Jewish communist internationalism, then the Jewish race is doomed. Interestingly, internationalism is an early incarnation of globalization. Another writer, William Joyce, an Englishman, so disgusted with Britain's subservience to the Jews that he would defect to Germany just before World War II, and broadcast a radio program from there trying to wake up the British people to the enemy in their midst, stated this year Britain and Germany, particularly with the assistance of Italy, can form against Bolshevism and international finance. twin Jewish manifestations, a bulwark much too strong to invite attack. International finance is controlled by great Jewish moneylenders, and communism is being propagated by Jewish agitators who are at one fundamentally with the powerful capitalists of their race in desiring an international world order, which would, of course, give universal sovereignty to the only international race in existence. Indeed, on February 4th, renowned historian, Hilaire Belloc, makes the following statement in G.K.'s Weekly: the propaganda of communism throughout the world, in organization and direction, is in the hands of Jewish agents. As for anyone who does not know that the Bolshevist movement in Russia is Jewish, I can only say that he must be a man who is taken in by the suppression of our deplorable press. This year, Professor Ray Kulischer, a Jew, calls for the genocide of all Germans to be the priority of worldwide Jewry when he states Germany is the enemy of Judaism and must be pursued with deadly hatred. The goal of Judaism today is a merciless campaign against all German peoples and the complete destruction of the nation. We demand a complete blockade of trade, the importation of raw materials stopped, and retaliation towards every German, woman and child. On April 28, in an article published in the Daily Express, 27-year-old Lord Victor Rothschild also demonstrates how prophetic he is when asked by reporter W. Hickey where he intended to live when the lease on his Piccadilly home ran out. He replied, "Nowhere probably, I just don't know. Not till after the war anyway." It would be 2.5 years before World War II would start, yet, naturally, he already knew the war was coming. On October 30, Rear Admiral Henry Hamilton Beamish stated the following to an assembly in New York in 1848: "The word anti-Semitic was invented by the Jews to prevent the use of the word Jew. The right word for them is Jew. I implore all of you to be accurate, call them Jews. There is no need to be delicate on this Jewish question. You must face them in this country. The Jew should be satisfied here. I was here 47 years ago, your doors were thrown open to the Jews and they were free. Now he has got you absolutely by the throat, that is your reward." 1938. On January 1, Nesta Webster publishes her book, Germany and England, in which she states England is no longer controlled by Britons. We are under the invisible Jewish dictatorship, a dictatorship that can be felt in every sphere of life. On November 7, a Jew, Herschel Greenspan, assassinates Ernst Vogt, a minor official at the German embassy in Paris. In December, Sir Oswald Mosley makes the following revealing statement on the allegation that the Jews are being persecuted in Germany. Supposing that every allegation were true. Supposing it was a fact that a minority in Germany were being treated as the papers allege, was that any reason for millions in Britain to lose their lives in a war with Germany? How many minorities had been badly treated in how many countries since the war without any protest from press or politicians? Why was it only when Jews were the people affected that we had any demand for war with the country concerned? There was only one answer. That today Jewish finance controlled the press and political system of Britain. If you criticize a Jew at home, then jail threatens you. If others touch a Jew abroad, then war threatens them. Rabbi Stephen Wise, the president of both the American Jewish Congress and the World Jewish Congress, puts forward his expectations of the Jews' loyalty to his country of domicile when he makes the following statement to a rally in New York: "I am not an American citizen of the Jewish faith. I am a Jew. I am an American. I have been an American for 63/64 of my life, but I have been a Jew for 4,000 years. Hitler was right in one thing. He calls the Jewish people a race, and we are a race." 1939. IG. Farben, the leading producer of chemicals in the world and largest German producer of steel, dramatically increases its production. This increased production is almost exclusively used to arm Germany for World War II. This company is controlled by the Rothschilds and goes on to use Jews and other disaffected peoples as slave labor in concentration camps. Interestingly, I.G. Farben also created Zyklon gas that it will be alleged was used to exterminate Jews. In Germany, Hitler had been doing phenomenally well in turning his country around economically ever since he came to power. He did this by breaking with the Jewish international bankers, and trading by barter, thus bartering the surplus of goods Germany had, with the surplus of goods Germany needed that another country had, without debts being incurred on either side. He, like Abraham Lincoln before him, simply issued what money was needed on the authority of the German government, which was backed by the productivity of the German labor force, and not the empty promises of Jewish international bankers, who in a country without debt, could not function. As a result of this policy, Germany was able to regenerate the social and spiritual life of all its citizens. Put simply, when you are able to help your people, the people in turn help you, as they are of course happy because they are being respected, and are thus able to respect themselves. As a result of a Germany being run for the benefit of the Germans as opposed to for the benefit of Jewish bankers, the citizens of Germany were able to make Germany the most powerful and prosperous state in Europe in only a 7-year period. An example of how Hitler achieved this is recorded in William Gailey Simpson's 1978 book, Which Way Western Man?, in which he states the German peasant, who had been on the verge of utter ruin, was given an honored status as the source of the nation's food supply. His land was released from the grip of the Jewish usurer and measures taken to ensure that it should remain permanently in the possession of one family, handed down from father to son. The Jews could not let this continue, as they knew that it would spell the death of their debt-driven money system, and so World War II starts this year, in earnest. This war is about one thing: which money system would survive. This is not a war between Germany and the Allies, it is a war between Germany and the Jewish money power, who are in control of the Allied leadership and use them and their media to propagandize the Allied populace into hatred of the Germans. On May 22, Anthony Crossley, Conservative MP for Oldham, makes the following statement in the House of Commons in relation to the plight of the Arabs as a result of Jewish persecution of the Arabs in Palestine. I do not believe that there has ever been a debate in this House, when this House would have been more justified in calling to the bar an Arab speaker to explain the Arab point of view from the viewpoint of his own countrymen and his own country. There are no Arab members of Parliament. There are no Arab constituents to bring influence to bear upon their members of Parliament. There is no Arab control of newspapers in this country. It is impossible almost to get a pro-Arab letter into the Times. There are in the city no Arab financial houses who control large amounts of finance. There is no Arab control of newspaper advertisements in this country. There are no Arab ex-colonial secretaries who one by one get up and thunder, as they will, at the government during the debate, because of the mistakes they themselves have made in the past. Finally, and I want the colonial secretary to pay special attention to this point, tomorrow night there is to be a broadcast. There is to be himself giving the government point of view. There is to be the honorable member for the Don Valley to advance what is obviously the Zionist point of view. There is to be the honorable member for Carnarvon Boroughs supporting the Zionist point of view. There will not be a supporter of the Arabs who can advance their point of view. On August 15, less than 3 months later, Anthony Crossley will be killed in action off the coast of Denmark, having joined the British Armed Forces soon after the outbreak of World War II. 1940. Hans-Jürgen Kohler, in his book, Inside the Gestapo, states the following: of Maria Anna Siegel-Gruber, Adolf Hitler's grandmother, a little servant girl ... came to Vienna and became a domestic servant ... at the Rothschild mansion ... and Hitler's unknown grandfather must be probably looked for in this magnificent house. This is reiterated by Walter Langer in his book, The Mind of Hitler, in which he states Adolf's father, our Hitler, was the illegitimate son of Maria Anna Gruber. Maria Anna Gruber was living in Vienna at the time she conceived. At that time she was employed as a servant in the home of Baron Rothschild. As soon as the family discovered her pregnancy, she was sent back home. Where Auer was born. The idea that Hitler could have been a Rothschild illegitimate seems ridiculous. However, it cannot be denied that one of Hitler's major successes had been the emigration of Jews to Palestine, something which was also one of the Rothschilds' main aims. The Rothschilds knew that a country without a population would be meaningless. Furthermore, the propaganda the Jews got out of the Second World War advanced the Rothschilds' program of Jewish supremacism more significantly than any other event in history. This year William Joyce, living in self-imposed exile in Germany, publishes his book, Twilight Over England, in which he states of the Jewish character adamantine materialism, a flair for assuming mysticism outwardly, a supreme contempt for other races, a complete disregard for other people's rights, cleverness in imitation and improvisation, contempt for all labor not associated with high profits, great energy in the cause of money-making, a hatred of all nationalism but their own, a high degree of loyalty to their own family and their own community, an implicit faith in the power to corrupt Gentiles, a brilliant capacity for intrigue, and a pathetic inability to keep pace with any deeper thought or higher idealism are the chief characteristics of the Jewish race. On all these attributes, volumes could be written, but it should suffice to express the resultant of these forces very simply in the following tendencies. 1. An inability to avoid forming a state within a state. 2. Complete inability to view their Gentile hosts as possessing equal rights with their own.
Okay, now, what I'm going to do, we're going to go ahead and pray out real quick. I'm going to let this run for another 30 minutes because I've been trying to do these an hour at a time. That way you can always, I know everybody's it's 9 o'clock, I'm falling asleep, my wife falling asleep, so that way I can come back up here another time and look at it. All right, so let's go ahead and pray out real quick. Ab Yahuwah, we thank you so much for all your blessings. Thank you for your mercy, Father. Thank you for letting us get this information so we can help other people understand what's really going on so that they can understand and know that there's nothing else in this world that we have that we can rely on but you and your truth. And Father, give us the will to do to try to please, just to get us to walk in your will. And we ask these things in Yahushua's HaMashiach's name we pray. Hallelujah. All right.
Hallelujah.
All right.
So you're gonna do
3.
one now?
Predetermined specialization in
Another
all
30
those
minutes.
processes which bring high
Trying to do
profit.
my hour at a time.
Hence, in
So can they
capitalism,
see it?
almost exclusive preoccupation with finance, distribution, and exchange as distinct from productive
I
industry.
see.
Professional work undertaken either for profit or for the sake of social advancement. 4. A natural
Zoom
tendency
time.
to utilize
Thank
social
you,
and
dear.
economic advancement
I'm trying to
for the
get a
purpose
cold,
of gaining
so
political power. 5.
I'm fighting it though.
An unholy dread of nationalism as a factor which would draw attention to their racial nature and expose their operations. 6.
So you're saying,
The deliberate
Saul, that we'll
debasement
be
of
able
the
to come back
standards
up
of
here
culture in
another
the
day and
land of
look at
their
this?
sojourn.
Yes, yes,
7.
because I'm still recording.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good
Night.
night. Sweet dreams, everyone.
You too, Kim.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Alienation by competition of the Aryan who merely wants to get enough for himself and not more than anybody else. These resultants seem to manifest themselves in every land that the Jew inhabits.
This
1941.
one I.
President Roosevelt takes America into the Second World War by refusing to sell Japan any more steel scrap or oil. Japan is in the midst of a war against China, and without that scrap steel and oil, Japan knows they will be unable to continue that war. Roosevelt in turn knows this economic boycott would provoke the Japanese to attack America, which they subsequently did at Pearl Harbor. Interestingly, Back in 1939, President Roosevelt tried his hardest to railroad the United States into the war in Europe to accommodate the Jews in the United States and the world. But when that failed, he knew he would have to try a different tactic. That was, of course, what happened at Pearl Harbor. Sir Josiah Stamp, director of the Bank of England during the years 1928 to 1941, makes the following statement with regard to banking. The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. The process is perhaps the most astounding piece of sleight of hand that was ever invented. Banking was conceived in iniquity and born in sin. Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave them the power to create money, and with the flick of the pen they will create enough money to buy it back again. Take this great power away from them and all great fortunes like mine will disappear, and they ought to disappear, for then this would be a better and happier world to live in. But if you want to continue to be slaves of the banks and pay the cost of your own slavery, then let bankers continue to create money and control credit. 1942. Prescott Bush, father and grandfather of future American Presidents George Herbert Walker and George W. respectively, has his company seized under the Trading with the Enemy Act. He had been funding Hitler from America, whilst American soldiers were being killed by German soldiers. Interestingly, the Anti-Defamation League never criticizes any of the Bush family for this. On May 8, the Jewish Chronicle runs an editorial in which they state boastfully, "We have been at war with Hitler since the first day that he gained power." Indeed, on December 3, Chaim Weizmann, president of the World Jewish Congress, makes the following statement in New York: "We are not denying and we are not afraid to confess, this war is our war and that it is waged for the liberation of Jewry. Stronger than all fronts together is our front, that of Jewry. We are not only giving this war our financial support on which the entire war production is based. We are not only providing our full propaganda power, which is the moral energy that keeps this war going. The guarantee of victory is predominantly based on weakening the enemy forces, on destroying them within their own country, within the resistance. And we are the Trojan horse in the enemy's fortress. Thousands of Jews living in Europe constitute the principal factor in the destruction of our enemy. There, our front is a fact and the most valuable aid for victory." Leonard Goldenson founds the ABC television network and as president oversees ABC's success. 1943. February 18, Zionist Isaac Greenbaum, head of the Jewish Agency Rescue Committee, in a speech to the Zionist Executive Council states, "If I am asked, could you give from the United Jewish Appeal, monies to rescue Jews, I say, no, and I say again no." He goes on to state, "One cow in Palestine is worth more than all the Jews in Poland." This is not a surprise, as Zionism and Nazism had similar aims. They both wanted the Jews out of Germany. However, the Zionists were not interested in any Jews that didn't want to go to Palestine and thought it would be more beneficial to ensure these Jews be placed in concentration camps, in order to frighten Jews worldwide into fleeing to Palestine, which they touted as the only state where they could be safe. 1944. On November 6, Lord Moyne, British minister resident in the Middle East, is assassinated in Cairo by two members of the Jewish terrorist group, the Stern Gang, led by future Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Shamir. He is also responsible for an assassination attempt against Harold McMichael, the High Commissioner of the British Mandate of Palestine, this same year. Interestingly, he also masterminds another successful assassination this year against the United Nations representative in the Middle East, Count Folk Bernardo, although he had secured the release of 21,000 prisoners from German camps during World War II, was seen by Yitzhak Shamir and his terrorist collaborators as an anti-Zionist. In Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, initially called the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development or IBIRD, the name, World Bank, was not actually adopted until 1975, are approved with full United States participation. The principal architects of the Bretton Woods system, and hence the IMF, are Harry Dexter White and John Maynard Keynes. Interestingly, Harry Dexter White, who died in 1946, would be identified as a Soviet spy whose code name was Jurist, on October 16, 1950, in an FBI memo, and as for John Maynard Keynes, he is British. What the IMF and World Bank essentially did, was repeat on a world scale what the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 had established in the United States. They created a banking cartel comprising the world's privately owned central banks, which gradually assumed the power to dictate credit policies to the banks of all nations. In the same way, the Federal Reserve Act authorized the creation of a new national fiat currency called Federal Reserve Notes. The IMF has been given the authority to issue a world fiat money called Special Drawing Rights, or SDRs. Member nations would end up being pressured into making their currencies fully exchangeable for SDRs. The IMF is controlled by its board of governors, which are either the heads of different central banks, or the heads of the various national treasury departments who are dominated by their central banks. Also, the voting power in the IMF gives the United States and the United Kingdom, the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England, effective overall control of it. 1945. On July 16, the first successful test of the atomic bomb occurs at the Trinity site, 200 miles south of Los Alamos. Its creator, J. Robert Oppenheimer, a Rothschild, states in Wonder I Am Become Death, the destroyer of worlds. He is right. Within the month, subsequent detonations over Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan result in the deaths of 140,000 people in Hiroshima and 80,000 in Nagasaki. The end of World War II. It is reported that the Rothschild-controlled IG. Farben plants were specifically not targeted in the bombing raids on Germany. Interestingly, at the end of the war, whilst parts of Germany lay in ruins, they were found to have only sustained 15% damage. The tribunals held at the end of the Second World War, to investigate Nazi war crimes, censor any materials recording Western assistance to Hitler, such as that of Prescott Bush. The Rothschilds take a giant step towards their goal of world domination when their third overt attempt at world government, the Second League of Nations, which is called the United Nations, is approved this year. 1946. On January 3, William Joyce is executed. As he awaits his execution, he makes his last statement: in death as in this life, I defy the Jews who caused this last war, and I defy the power of darkness which they represent. I warn the British people against the aggressive imperialism of the Soviet Union. May Britain be great once again, and, in the hour of the greatest danger to the West, may the standard of the Hagenkreuz, swastika, be raised from the dust, crowned with the historic words, "Ihr habt doch gesiegt, you have actually won." I am proud to die for my ideals, and I am sorry for the sons of Britain who have died without knowing why. On February 12, the British Security Services receive a telegram from a reliable source in Palestine claiming that the Stern Gang are training members to go to England to assassinate members of His Majesty's government, especially Mr. Bevin, British Foreign Minister Ernest Bevin. On July 22, the future Prime Minister of Israel, Ashkenazi Jew, David Ben-Gurion, orders another future Prime Minister of Israel, Ashkenazi Jew, Menachem Begin, to carry out a terrorist attack on the King David Hotel in Palestine, to try and drive out the British. As a result of this, 91 people are killed, most of them civilians, 41 Arabs, 28 British, 17 Jews, and 5 others. Around 45 people are injured. when he was asked by prominent journalist Russell Warren Howe if he considered himself the father of terrorism in the Middle East, Menachem Begin proudly replied no, in the entire whole world. 60 years later, on July 22, 2006, another future Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, together with many other Israeli government representatives, dedicate a plaque at the site of this terrorist atrocity, which cites the bombers as freedom fighters to be admired by Israel. Just to put the gravity of the attack on the King David Hotel into perspective, it was at the time the biggest death toll as a result of single terrorist action ever, and was only surpassed nearly 40 years later by the bombing of the United States barracks in Beirut in 1982. The Bank of England is nationalised, which means that the state acquired all the shares in the Bank of England, which now belong to the Treasury and are held in trust by the Treasury solicitor. However, as the government has no money to pay for the shares, they give the current secret shareholders of the Bank of England government stocks instead of money for their shares. This means that although the state now receives the operating profits of the bank, this gain is largely offset by the fact that the government now has to pay interest on the new stocks it has issued to pay for the shares. So, although the Bank of England is now state-owned, the fact is that the British money supply is still almost entirely in private hands, with 97% of it being in the form of interest-bearing loans of one sort or another, created by private commercial banks. As a result of this, the bank is largely controlled and run by those from the world of commercial banking and conventional economics. The members of the Court of Directors, who set policy and oversee its functions, are drawn almost entirely from the world of banks, insurance, economists and big business, and of course a Rothschild continues to sit on its board. Although the Bank of England is called a central bank, it is now essentially a regulatory body that supports and oversees the existing system. It is sometimes referred to as the lender of last resort, insofar as one of its functions as the banker's bank is to support any bank or financial institution that gets into difficulties and suffers a run on its liquid assets. Interestingly, in these circumstances, it is not obliged to disclose details of any such measures, the reason being so as to avoid a crisis in confidence. 1947. The British, who prior to World War II declared that there would be no more immigration of Jews to Palestine in order to protect the Palestinians from their acts of terror against both them and British soldiers, transfer control of Palestine to the United Nations. The United Nations resolved to have Palestine partitioned into two states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem to remain as an international zone to be enjoyed by all religious faiths. This transfer is scheduled to take place on May 15, 1948. However, just to put into perspective who controls the United Nations, please be aware that the UN had no right to give Arab property to anyone, as indeed even though the Jews owned only 6% of Palestine at the time, Resolution 181 granted the Jews 57% of the land, leaving the Arabs, who at that time had 94%, with only 43%. Terror attacks against the British in Palestine continued. In fact, during the summer, 3 Jewish terrorists, Jacob Weiss, Mrnakar, and Avshalom Habib, found guilty of an attack on Acre Jail on May 4, were to be hanged. At the same time, the airgun terrorist gang headed by future Prime Minister Menachem Begin were holding 2 British sergeants, Mervyn P's and Clifford Martin, as hostages for the 3 Jewish terrorists. Indeed, Begin stated, "We will hang the British sergeants at exactly the same time as our men die." The executions of the Jewish terrorists took place, and the British sergeants were found executed also, hanging from 2 eucalyptus trees. Captain D. H. Galati of 23rd Field Squadron, Royal Engineers, cut down one of the bodies only to be seriously injured by an explosion. Unsatisfied with killing these British soldiers, the Jews had booby-trapped their corpses. Interestingly, a popular British newspaper, the Daily Express, carried as their lead story, a large picture of these soldiers strung up in the trees, but this front page has now been deleted from the Daily Express archives. The owner of the Daily Express, Richard Desmond, a Jewish pornographer. Information collected by the Anti-Defamation League, AD, in its spy operations on United States citizens is used by the House Select Committee on Un-American Activities. Subcommittee Chair, Claire Hoffman, dismisses the Edel's reports on suspected communists as hearsay. In October, Ashkenazi Jew, Albert Einstein, writes an open letter to the United Nations encouraging all national governments to be destroyed to make way for a one-world government to be run by the UN. In his diary of July 21, President Harry S. Truman makes the following entry: "The Jews have no sense of proportion, nor do they have any judgment on world affairs. The Jews, I find, are very, very selfish. They care not how many Estonians, Latvians, Finns, Poles, Yugoslavs or Greeks get murdered or mistreated as post-war displaced persons as long as the Jews get special treatment. Yet when they have power, physical, financial or political, neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty or mistreatment to the underdog." 1948.
All right, we're going to stop right there. And I'm going to call it a night. So I'm hoping you guys learning something out of this. I'm sure you are. Might have got to do a lot of research on your own, which I've done a lot of myself. So, I mean, this video is on point. So, you got to look at it. You need to share it with as many people as you possibly can. This is the only way people are going to come out of this matrix. Time to wake up and serve Yah. Just that simple. Don't hold this information to yourself. Put it out there. It needs to be known. Trying to save lives here. Trying to save souls here, right? And I mean souls, we're trying to save bodies. We're trying to make sure that spirits are where they need to be, in line with Yah. So until the next time, thank you for coming up here. Thank you for your time. Shalom.